Adam Coleman is back. He's back to talk to us about the not so blackface scandal that recently occurred because they had this picture, as you put on your article for the New York Post. Everybody go check it out. Sports journalism utterly sucks. Deadspin blackface debacle proves it. They have this half of his face, but they don't show that the other side is red. I'm going to have you explain all this in a second, because we're not just going to talk about this scandal itself, but you wrote an article about sports journalism generally speaking and how this is a symptom really of a greater disease. But let's go to this. This is the Deadspin article. This is the headline. The NFL needs to speak out against the Kansas City Chiefs fan in blackface native headdress. Tell us what happened here, Adam.
Basically, as you can see, it was on CBS. CBS showed that image, or obviously it was a video. They were showing that child with a headdress on, and they saw the side of his face in black. And basically, Karan, or I like to call Karen Phillips, decided to form some sort of complaint. And what he did was like typical leftist stuff, where they're trying to find the intersectionality of sports and social issues. And so they can meld the two really to talk about social issues. But what he ended up doing was chastising a child who wasn't doing anything wrong. And honestly, he was chastising a child and his behavior, or not even behavior, what he was wearing. Ultimately, that child, he assumed, was just some white kid who was just wearing blackface and a headdress. How dare he? Actually, the child is Native American, like quite literally Native American, and family on one of the tribal committees as well. So, actually wearing the headdress is part of his heritage, and they didn't have a problem with it. And actually, he wasn't wearing blackface. Half his face was in black. The other half of his face was in red, just right there. So that's because they were wearing like war paint. But either way, like, what's crazy to me as a sports fan is we're pretending that people painting their faces, the colors of the team, is like some new thing. And the idea, like, the colors of the team, they often wear black and red. This isn't far gone from something that has happened before. If the team was blue, he'd be wearing blue. This is like the ultimate problem that I have, and I was trying to highlight in the article, is that we have people who work in sports journalism who are trying to take all of the fun that exists within sports and just suck it dry. They're basically wannabe politicos, and they're trying to find some way to have a political conversation with the root of it as being sports, right? And that's the part that, as a sports fan, has basically killed most of the American sports for me. And I, like you said, this is much of a symptom to a bigger issue that's actually happening.
All right, let me ask you about this, because this was the follow-up that this guy, AJ Perez, has. AJ Perez, senior reporter at FOS, prior stops, USA Today Sports, Fox Sports, CBS Sports, so has a pretty mainstream background. And his quote from the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, it says they do not endorse wearing regalia as part of a costume or participating in any other type of cultural appropriation. That's a quote they say from the chairman of the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. Okay, so they're trying to say, all right, well, it wasn't blackface, but it was still a problem because he was still wearing this paint, and they went and found the chairman of the tribe, and he says, yeah, we still don't support it. What do you think about that?
I'm glad you showed this. So this is also the problem with sports media, and actually it happens a lot of time with other types of media. But sports media, when someone comes for one of them, they all try to back that person up, right? Because they want the idea to be real, right? And if I can say, well, actually, there's some sort of way that this actually is a problem. So basically, they asked a guy who's on a committee at a charged situation involving this child wearing a headdress. The man made the most lukewarm statement of, hey, listen, we don't endorse it, but he also says we don't condemn it either, right? They don't really highlight that part. And honestly, who cares? Like when I read that statement for the first time, I was like, and who cares? So some guy, some Indian guy in a committee says, hey, we don't endorse it. And is the kid still wrong because that guy said we don't endorse it? Like it's the most asinine thing about sports media right now. And these AJ Perez, maybe I don't know if AJ Perez is trying to co-sign like, see guys, there's still a problem. I can't tell from him, but Kevin Blackstone from ESPN, he showed it like, as a real journalist, I found this out and we made calls. And this is what the guy said. And Kevin Blackstone, who cares, right? The child, one, I have to go back. This is a child, is allowed to wear whatever the hell he wants to wear, right? Anybody is allowed to wear whatever they want to wear. And they don't need some sort of authority from some guy on some committee to say wearing this is okay. Like if I like I'm just it just makes me want my head to explode.
You are right
Oh
though
my
to
God.
point out that is exactly how the game works. Your people got it a little wrong, but maybe you're nervous that, and maybe you don't even realize you're nervous, but you're thinking, okay, yeah, but still, we, the people who give you the news, we still know what we're talking about, and here's why. And you're right. And then and I don't know, Adam, if you get questions about stuff where it's like, Adam, please respond to this thing, this bigger thing, like, either condemn it or give us, because they're like, it's like looking for one person to represent like an over generality that they agree with, like you said. Like when we were going out and getting what we called man on the street back when I was in TV news, this was a very common way to localize a national story, which is a terrible way for local news stations to report, because usually we have no clue what's actually going on in the national story. We're just taking our affiliate word for it. So if I work for NBC, I'm just assuming NBC got it right. And then I go to Walmart and I ask the first person who comes out, or the first person who's willing to talk to me with the microphone in my hand, what they think. And then I act like this is what people think. And then the headline is like, Republicans mad about this, because one Republican who walked out of Walmart and was willing to talk to me. So it's like you could have equally done this story. Like we found 5 people from this tribe who didn't give an F, right? But you don't do it that way. You do it the other way because it makes the point that you're trying to make. So I see what you mean.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, I don't even know from this statement, the way I interpret it is it seems like a PR statement, and it's not condemning the kid. It's saying that we don't listen, guys, we don't necessarily endorse it. It's very lukewarm, in my opinion. They're not saying this is abhorrent behavior. They're not using any strong language whatsoever in this. And to me, it's you're some committee, and then the media starts hounding you about some random kid and wants you to give a statement. And so you contact your PR people and they make the most general lukewarm statement. And here comes the mainstream sports media saying, see, got you guys. Like we found the smoking gun. Some Indian people didn't like it. Like it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me. But yeah, it's a game of manipulation. Highlight what you want to highlight. When you mess up and you get caught, then find another angle to revalidate your original claim.
Yeah. It is actually kind of funny, except for that it has these consequences of getting everybody fighting with each other that's not paying attention to what you're paying attention to, or what I know about what happens behind the scenes. And so it has obviously larger effects, which I want to ask you about in a second. Why you wrote this headline, "Sports Journalism Utterly Sucks." So we're going to break that down in a second. Ab's going to tell us why it sucks. Something that doesn't suck, though, is this amazing wine from Argentina, which is a great way to support my work and a great way to apologize to grandma. If you're going to see her at some holiday party that you're going to and you haven't talked to her in years because she posted something you didn't like on Facebook, this is a great way to make it up to her. Grandma only needs one glass of wine, guys, to be tipsy enough to forgive you. So get her one glass of good wine. AllisonWinePromo.com. You get 50% off the wine and 50% off shipping. These come from very remote regions of Argentina, small family farms, hand-picked grapes, high elevation mountains, lower pesticides, and it just tastes very good, and it is a great way to support my work. If you are a coffee drinker, though, you can go to Allison or twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. These are organic roasts. They're also extremist altitude roasts, just like the extremist altitude wine, and they're great for waking up in the morning and figuring out what video of mine you're going to watch, because I need you out there, especially if you're watching on YouTube, share the videos because YouTube hates my channel right now. twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. There is light roast, dark roast, espresso, and tea. And then finally, you want some healthy omega fats. You want some vitamin D. I cured my cavities naturally with the stuff. I know on YouTube, you're not really supposed to say that you cure anything except with pharmaceuticals. But anyway, if you go to greenpasture.org and use Allison10 as your promo code, or just use the affiliate link in the description of the video or the pinned comment, check out all their products. I personally have been taking the fermented cod liver oil, butter oil blend for the last 10, 11 years. And I used to get cavities all the time. And like one time 6 years ago, I went to the dentist after forgetting basically to go to the dentist for 3 years, and I had no cavities. And I swear this stuff it works. It's great. And if you're going into winter, you're already in winter. We're in Florida, so winter comes and goes between 80 degrees and 40 degrees, depending on the day. But I still take it. And I think it's a great product, and they're a great sponsor as well. So greenpasture.org, Allison10 is the promo code. And also locals, AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where you put questions ahead of time for interviews. Be on my editorial board. We got a bunch for Adam, as you can see, that I'm going to throw his way in a second. But I want to ask you first, let's go back to this. Why isn't this just a one-time deal, Adam? Why did you think sports journalism utterly sucks? And when did it start sucking? Like, is it always sucked and we just started paying attention to it? Why does it feel so politically charged right now for people like me? Maybe it always has been.
It hasn't always been, actually. I was talking to, I don't know if you're familiar with Sage Steele. She was on ESPN for a long time.
I don't know her, but I know who she is.
You know who she is? Okay. Yeah. And I sent her my article and I asked her, what does she think? And she said, you're spot on. People like Sage Steele, people like Stuart Scott, like I remember, like as a teenager especially, turning on SportsCenter, watching these people who took like a game and made it even funner, right? You know, just the way they talked about it, the catchphrases, the personality, all these different things. Like that was like the heyday. And I didn't think like that stuff will end. But it slowly started to like deteriorate. If you ask me when it started to happen, I would say probably around the Kaepernick situation, it really started escalating. Maybe a little bit before that, as far as becoming more politically involved. I think over time, like, let's say there was a situation involving some football player and domestic violence, right? They started talking about it. And, you know, it would happen every so often. And it's a little bit weird, you know, to kind of like talk about rebounds and then go to domestic violence, right? And it just became kind of a weird situation as far as melding like stuff that's happening off the field that's like not completely related, but sort of related, to talk about these things. But I would say like it really like took a spike around Kaepernick in his situation. And coincidentally, that's right around when Black Lives Matter and Ferguson, because I believe that was basically what he was reacting to, why he started taking the knee. But I would say it took like a big jump then.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Adam. Okay, honestly, do you think is this a guy or a lady writing this article? I don't know. Karan, is that a guy or a girl?
It's a guy.
Okay, so this dude, Karan, do you think he really didn't know that this was red on one side and black on the other, or do you think he intentionally wrote it that way? I mean, maybe that's not worth guessing because how do we get into his head? But that's like you would think they would have changed the headline by now. You know what I mean? Like it's now that it's the cat's out of the bag that it's not blackface. I mean, look, you may say I don't like the war paint thing, and I'm offended by war paint, but you can't call it blackface. It's half red face. You know, so
Right.
so what do you think about that? I mean, yeah, you could be equally offended he has red if you're like, oh, you can't call Indians red, so it could be
Mhm.
red face. So why don't they care about the red face? I don't know. I just think that's interesting. They didn't even change the headline either afterwards to be like, okay, City Chiefs fan in war paint or cultural appropriation of war paint or something like that. They left it that way. All that kind
Mm.
of stuff that interests me. It's like they don't think they got it wrong at all.
Well, also, and this, it's not just him; it's his editors,
Right,
right?
right.
They're supposed to corroborate all this stuff.
Yeah.
When I send stuff in, depending on the publication, they check sources, they check links and stuff like that. Is this
Mhm.
true? And if you start making claims, they're supposed to check it. So it's not even just him. He might have written it, but he got the A-OK from at least one editor to keep moving forward. So it's not even just did he not know this? It's did they
Right,
not
right.
know this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And likely they knew and did not care because this is part of the problem with having ideology injected into media and sports especially, is that it's not about truth, right? It's about finding a narrative, pushing it, and let truth take go by the wayside. It's about pushing the narrative, finding a situation and lambasting the public because of it, right? Using that child to say that child is a representation of our entire society and what's wrong with all of us, right? And I'm going to wag my finger, as Mr. Caron Phillips does, and tell you what's wrong because you're too ignorant to notice. And it doesn't matter this case. The reason why, and you understand this, the reason why it doesn't matter is because the lie spreads faster than the truth. If they
Yeah.
inject the initial story that the child is wearing blackface, more people are going to hear that first. Less people are going to hear about the retraction that might come later, right? So then a week goes by, 2 weeks go by. What do people remember? Oh, you heard about that kid who was wearing blackface, right? It's the lie is just keep spreading and spreading, and so that's why they don't care. Even if they did know, they really it wouldn't stop them because it's too juicy of a headline to utilize.
Right.
Blackface
Yeah.
NFL, right, has all the buzzwords.
It is funny, like even the caption under this says Chiefs fan on Sunday in Native American headdress and blackface. They haven't even changed. I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, I feel like my bosses, I mean, I would hope that, and I'm not saying I came from a great place, but I would hope that if we saw him later with red on the other side, we would change it to like, and have an editor's note, or at least say something like this originally said blackface, but actually it's red and blackface, and just at least say
Mhm.
that. And then, and you know what, still be offended. We could still be offended and just say that he's wearing, culturally appropriated war paint and headdress. So you can still keep the outrage if you want, but I mean, at least be mad about the right thing. I don't know. I think it's weird they haven't changed it. I think that's weird.
But
It's delusional
the
almost.
yeah, it is. But the key part, see, this wouldn't be necessarily a story if it was headdress. The key part is to say blackface. The
Yeah.
racial component is actually the driving force for this story, right? Because talking about race, talking about racism, or implying racism in whatever story makes everyone go insane, right? And it makes people click on the article and see what the hell is going on. Whether they agree with it or disagree with it, it makes people pay attention. It's like the media's version of like low hanging fruit. Just say black racism, use the buzzwords, and everybody will start clicking on it, whether they like it or hate it. It doesn't matter. They clicked on it, we get the ad revenue, so on and so forth. So I think that's the key part. That's why they cannot go back and say war paint. They have to show this image.
Yeah, or you're saying then there would just be no story for them.
There'd be no story. No one cares if someone wears a headdress.
Well, I guess it's so weird the things we get offended by. I mean, it should be equal opportunity offending. If you're going to be offended by cultural appropriation or whatever, then you should be offended by everything. I don't know. All right. So Empress 9 says to Adam, you have addressed this many times, but why wasn't the reporter more curious and asking questions before he responded? He wasn't reporting. He was assuming.
Oh, well, because I don't know if I would call this person a reporter. They're a member of the media, but that's more accurate. They're not really a journalist. They claim the title of sports journalist, but they're not really a journalist. Like a key part of being a journalist is that you're curious, right? You want to find the answer. You want to find the truth. You have questions. There is no questions. And this person, by all intents and purposes, like when I say this, they're a leftist ideologue. Like just by the language that they use, how they interpret stuff, and even in response to people saying you're lying, right, on his Twitter account, he still defends his position that there's still a problem. And this is what happens when leftists get caught and stuff like that. They'll say, okay, but it's still a problem, right? Even though they lied, it doesn't matter that they lied, because if it was true, then it's still a problem. And even though this situation may be a lie, there's a bunch of other situations that are just like it. So it doesn't matter that this one is actually a lie. They play that game that the ends justify the means, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if this is a 9-year-old child. It doesn't matter if the story is true or false. It does not matter. They just need a story to imply a narrative. It is the same thing with what's his name? With hands up, don't shoot, the narrative around that. When the DOJ went and investigated it, and all of the witnesses recanted saying, when they initially said, yeah, his hands were up, behind the scenes, they were like, actually, his hands weren't up. And actually, he was charging the cop. And actually, he wasn't innocent. Like, right? See, I know that because I read the report, right? And this is, mind you, this wasn't during Trump. This was during the Obama era, when they had motive to try and find the real racism that happened here in Ferguson. Now they uncovered Ferguson police department was doing some shady stuff as far as giving people tickets and taking advantage of people who are poor. But outside of that, this particular situation, that fueled this entire narrative for years. Even still to this day, people still believe hands up, don't shoot is actually real. Even his friend who started the rumor recanted what he said. He said, actually, that didn't happen. He didn't put his hands up. And all the witnesses were stating that he was charging the cop. But it does not matter, because there are 1 million Mike Browns every year, right? Or throughout human history, 400 years of oppression. It doesn't matter that Mike Brown didn't have his hands up and did charge the cop. It doesn't matter, because the other Mike Browns had experienced this, and we need to stand up, and they just keep moving forward. It does not matter.
That's a really good point. I was actually thinking too, critical thought over on locals, unless the offender is Trudeau, meaning Trudeau, because I was thinking when you were talking about blackface is the selling point, like everybody freaks out unless it's Trudeau, because for whatever reason he got it passed. And actually there have been some celebrities, right, that have been kind of like busted, but we just move past it. If they're in the gang, we have empathy for why they were doing it or something, and then we don't. Anyway, okay. And Allison, thank you, Ginger Ninja, would be better at defamation than the propagandists. These lying journalists aren't even sharp. I imagine the other editor was an Allison with 2 L's compensating. And you know what? I actually just got another email from somebody thinking I'm Allison Morrow at CNN. I don't know if you know this, Adam, but there's an Allison Morrow at CNN. She's not well liked. She has 2 L's in her name, and we don't even look alike, but I get emails for her, intended for her all the time. And one guy, because she wrote an article called Why Inflation is Good for Poor People. And it's something like that. And yeah, a guy wrote me an email and said, I just had to leave my groceries at the store because I couldn't afford them and gas. Go F yourself. That was the email. I guess I was like, wow, okay. Thanks.
So,
But yeah, so
so
anyway, I just
I
found
actually
another.
have a doppelganger, an Adam Coleman doppelganger. And he's also a black guy as well, but he does like Christian apologetics. So
Uh-huh.
sometimes I'll like randomly get a message about it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, because if you go on YouTube, he has YouTube videos and stuff like that. So and then one time he contacted me on Twitter. He's like, by the way, someone sent me an email, and I think it's for you. So then we started following each other.
See, I've asked her, I would have her on. I thought I asked her. I'm just thinking I have asked her, but maybe I need to go back and try again. Though I'm sure she can't. Even like under contract, she probably can't, but she I don't think she would anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. DMC recommended reading for everyone. Have you read it? Africans and Native Americans: The Language of Race and the Evolution of Red Black People.
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay. Q Big Zirconia. Today's West media reminds me about Chinese state media, not just the Chinese state media in current day, but in the 60s, full of articles with right wing this, anti that. It went like that for 20 years until people finally realized they branded did not like a right winger, reactionist, anti revolutionaire, and many were normal people, bankrupted their credibility and cynicalized a large portion of the population. Now, even the Chinese state media don't do this anymore. How it went this way and how so many Westerners eat that S up is incredible. There you go.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it's wearing. I remember, let's say, peak 2020, and I remember people being legitimately scared of being called like a white supremacist, even though they were clearly not doing something that was white supremacist or white supremacist oriented, or being called a hard right, far right. You know, all these negative terms, slanderous terms that they try to name people for doing stuff that's actually pretty reasonable. Very much so like what that person was describing, just normal people doing pretty normal things, some of it's just pretty moderate things.
Mhm.
And I think the initial reaction was like a good reaction. Like, you should not like it that someone calls you a white supremacist, right? Especially if you're not. And I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but I don't think people care anymore if they're being called that.
Or
Like,
as
in one
much.
hand,
Definitely not as much. I mean,
yeah,
I think you can get away with talking about these issues without facing the cancel culture. The window has shifted. You know, it definitely has expanded to allow for certain conversation. Does it have no consequences now? I don't think so, but I agree with you that has consequences. This conversation you and I are having, even I think 5 or 6 years ago, would have been dicier than it is now. I mean, now
yeah.
it's almost like stupid. This stuff is now you can talk about it and it's stupid.
Right.
But you know, for a while there, it was like only if you were of the brand of person, you know, if you're a woman, only like women could criticize like misogynist or, you know, anti or criticize a woman who went the wrong way. And only a black person could criticize a black person who went the wrong way. You know what I mean? It was like only we had to stay in our lanes for a long time there. We couldn't like get out of them. I think now
Yeah.
you could have people talking about different kinds of people without, but still, I still think there's a little bit of there are some consequences still out there, but I agree with you. I think it's getting better. Okay.
Yeah.
MSLSM. I don't know how anyone could even think this up as being racist. I wish they took more photos to see if others were in blackface. Now I suppose you can't use face paint except for purple, green, pink, and white, maybe blue too. And then F6B Chris. Lies of omission are the same as deliberate falsehoods. The bad orange man was absolutely correct in calling the hacks in the corporate media our enemy. Cron Phillips is a piece of human knowing a little kid of racism. I don't know. I mean, I still wonder what that guy's thinking when he goes to bed at night. I know a lot of people still in the business. I think the vast majority are very content with the work that they do, and every once in a while, maybe they're like, I may have gotten that a little bit wrong, but I don't know. I sometimes think like we're living in totally separate realities because it seems so hilarious, you know, sad but tragic, but also hilarious. like it's like a Saturday Night Live skit. You know, like I was thinking the Babylon Bee should redo this article, you know, as a joke. But I think they take it very seriously. Like they're crusaders for a better reality, for a utopia that we can all strive for, and they take that job very seriously. I just don't know. I don't know how we're all like living in the same world sometimes.
So actually, I want to go back to what that one person said about the face paint color. That exactly what that person said is exactly what they want. Like the idea that you as a sports fan, you now need to second guess what is normal, right? That is the entire purpose of leftist ideology, is that everything about our society is wrong, right? And they just wait for certain moments to highlight how it is wrong. They have the prescription, right? And the prescription is always to change it and do something that is abnormal that for you to do. And usually, especially if it's something that is generally fun or jovial, it is about never doing it again, right? And it's to make you second guess yourself for every little thing that you do. It is like when I hear people say, "Am I allowed to say this?" That is exactly what they want, right? They want you to second guess yourself, to censor yourself, right? All they have to do is have one example. So they take this one child with his blackface and make you second guess as a fan of ever putting anything on your face that might even come anywhere close to resembling blackface, right? Because all it needs to take is another article showing some kid wearing a blue face and saying blue face is now the new representation of blackface, right? That's all they need. Yeah. That's all they need. They just remix it however which way they want. It doesn't even need to make any sense. They'll find some sort of way to stretch it. And that's the whole point. The point is they want you to second guess yourself. And what people have to do is say, F you, I'm going to continue to wear this. There is nothing wrong with me wearing this. And one crying sports journalist is not going to make an entire nation of sports fans second guess what they've been doing for decades, right? That's fun. That's uniting. You know, they want to get rid of that. Their goal is to divide us. And if they can find some sort of way to kill every aspect of fun while dividing us, they will do it.
Okay, so have you seen the video going around? I think it was a congressional hearing about Harvard professors who are getting canned, and Claudine Gay was taking a question. Did you see this? She's, I think, like a head, like diversity inclusion type person at Harvard. And they were like, okay, so, you know, do you let your students ask questions and explore ideas? And she's like, yes, of course. We're very inclusive school. I mean, we're all about, you know, they're like, well, what about your professors? And she's like, yeah, of course. And I'm sitting there thinking, how do these institutions, because even, I don't know, man, I went to seminary in 2003 to 2007. And I'm sitting in graduate school at Boston University, also taking classes at Harvard. And it was very clear that we were at the beginning of this cancel thing because Facebook had just, I think, come around, but we still didn't suffer the same consequences. Like now everybody can dogpile on you, but back then it was a lot harder because there wasn't the amount of social media presence. Right. But even then, like you knew that you were risking everything by raising your hand in an academic setting and asking a freaking question. And I remember thinking to myself, this has got to be the worst possible thing for education. For students, like even if you're somebody totally in on that mentality of like, we've got to brainwash people to believe all these different things that are important for people to believe now, or else you're a terrible person. Why wouldn't you want them to ask a question and then use that opportunity to answer it and push them in your direction? Instead, you just get piled on if you dare to ask a question because this is confusing to you. How do you think somebody like Claudine Gay sees Harvard as an inclusive environment when we all, I mean, any thinking rational person, because I mean, you know, the sports journalism is just another symptom of this sort of this larger problem, and a lot of it's coming out of academics. How do you think she's looking at this like this is an inclusive world where probably half the students are sitting there thinking, I'm not talking about that. I'll talk to my, you know, friends in a closed room or something, but I'm never going to post anything about it. I'm not going to ask a question about it. And, you know, it almost, it's like the opposite, you know, there's less conversation there's less understanding there. It's not inclusive at all. It's actually far more divisive, but yet she can say that somehow. And I don't think she's lying. I think she really believes it.
Oh yeah. The key words are, is she a thinking rational person? And she's not. Like these people are ideological. And when you're ideological, it's about adhering to whatever's within that box of ideas and anything that validates that box of ideas. So we're inclusive as long as it fits in with inside this box, but we don't like heretics, right? And that's for her. Being inclusive and asking questions, the only questions that they're okay with are questions to validate their ideology, right? So if you were to ask a professor something that is a question that doesn't challenge the idea, then they're fine with that. But if it's a question that challenges the idea, then they don't like it, right? So it's a distinction between the two, but these aren't thinking rational people. Like people have to understand these are very, very ideological people. And what makes it worse about someone who's at an institution like Harvard is that they believe they're the creme they're like the creme de la creme. Like they're at the very top. And anything that is coming out of this institution is the best of information, the best professors. They must know, right? And they've thought about this a million times over, and they've analyzed it and spliced it apart. And they know something. Ultimately, it comes down to this. They know something that other people do not know.
Yeah.
And that means that everybody else is ignorant. And so we need to be the ones to show everybody how to move around this world appropriately, because we've allowed them to do that for far too long. They're out there.
It's true.
They're blackface at sports games. We need to tell them how they're sinners in this society.
It's totally that way in journalism now, where it's a reverse endorsement now. If people are calling you fake news, you take that as a compliment because they're like, good, I'm telling you something that you needed to hear. You don't say I'm wrong. You're like, oh, okay, obviously you needed to hear this. I'm telling you something you really needed to hear. I'm telling you the truth. I have a very good friend. I mean, she's a very nice, well-meaning person. And she's still in the business. And we were talking about how actually I was at a conference where somebody said they were interviewed by this particular station she works at a lot and they usually get it wrong. And I told her that. And she's like, that's funny, but people always say that we get it wrong. And I was like, yeah, and they're usually right. I texted her back, they're usually right. And she said, well, I respectfully disagree. People just don't want to hear the truth. That was what she wrote back. And I said, God, I'm like, I don't even know where to go with this, but that's not true. You're wrong. They actually are right that you get it wrong. And this whole idea that what I actually ended up saying back to her was, okay, explain to me how you guys complain constantly. You don't have time to do your job. You have too much on your plate. You don't do the research. You can't get any help, this and that. And you're complaining about how the industry sucks. And then you also tell people that you're doing a job. Everything you do is right. You always get it right. They should believe everything you say. I mean, you literally just said you can't do your job well, but you're trying to also tell people when they call you on it that you actually do your job well. This doesn't make any sense. And she was like, okay, well, that's a fair point. Because if you do call them on that, you're like, they can't. You're like, well, either you need to stop complaining and say your job, you're these big companies that own you and pay you, cents on the dollar and take all the money and run you like a factory farm of information. You either need to say that they're great and you love working for them and they're the perfect place to do journalism, or you need to admit that the journalism is dying there, and that includes you. Not just somebody else, that includes you. You're not able to do your job. Okay, one last quick thing, Adam, over here. Besides, somebody, how do they say? I like Adam's term box of ideas. Okay, critical thought. Has Adam ever been called a white supremacist?
Sure, but I don't give a shit. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to curse. I don't give a crap.
My son just closed the door on me. So he's one and he walked out and shut the door. Oh, and then somebody else said something
I've been
about
called like a sympathizer or allowing. They use that type of language.
Here we go. Blue face paint, not on my watch, Papa Smurf.
Exactly.
Okay, Adam. Everybody go follow Adam B. Coleman on Twitter. It's where is your wrong_speak. And actually one of Adam's new authors is going to be coming on next week. So that's very exciting. So stay tuned for Adam, where else may be following you besides the New York Post?
My Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. I have a whole bunch of interesting articles. It's not just politics, some psychology, some personal stories, a lot of personal stories. That's kind of my thing. Trials and tribulations, ideas, things of that nature. I just try to be myself and explore different ideas. And the political, cultural stuff I do touch on my Substack every so often, but I leave it mostly for the different publications I write for.
All right. And for everybody watching too, who does not do the digital world, you can now send me a letter, send me a book, send me Adam's book, send me whatever you want. Just not, like I said before, not like one of those creepy, I'm going to kill you letters with like the magazine cutouts, like letters out of the magazine, just that'll freak me out. But I have a P.O. box now. So go to P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida, 34432. And you can support my work there. You send me $1, send me a lottery ticket, send me whatever you want. Like I said, except for the letter with the magazine letter cutouts. And I think that is all I got. Adam, is there anything you'd like to say that I haven't asked you? You want to get off your chest?
Man, I got so many complaints now. No, everything is good. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here. I'm very, very thankful of, even a publication like New York Post let me write something like this. And I guess like the other news is that I look different than last time I was on here. I've lost around 75 pounds.
Yeah, I was going to say, I meant to say that before we went live. I totally noticed that. So congrats. That's awesome. How did you do it?
So I initially started doing like what everybody does, cut out the processed foods, cut out the sugar, the typical thing, started working out a little bit. But the really big thing was intermittent fasting. I started doing that, and the majority of the weight came off in 3 months.
How long did you, like 16 hours?
I started with 16 hours just to kind of get used to it, but I did that for maybe a week. As soon as I made it into 18 hours, that's when it really just started coming off. And you just start getting used to it. And then 24 hours just becomes easy. And I was doing alternating days. So every other day I would have, I would fast, 2 meals, 3 meals, 2 meals, 3 meals. Or if I was doing 24 hours, it might be just 1 meal that day. And yeah, the fasting part has been great for like regulating. If I go out, like Thanksgiving, I went to see my family, had turkey, and I just had that as 1 meal, and I fasted the rest of the way through, and I came back home and I lost weight. So it's been a great way to kind of balance things out. But now I'm at a different phase. I'm going all out as far as like building muscle. So for the next couple months, I'm actually eating more, taking in more protein, and going to the gym five days a week. So actually after this, I'm going to head down to the gym and get going, watch my steps.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Do you live, it looks like you live in a city, like a city. Where do you live?
No, actually I'm in the burbs.
Are you? But you're in okay, but there looks like there's an apartment building behind you or something out your window. Okay.
Yeah.
But you
so
have
it's a small
outside
complex.
run and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we live like in this, like, there's a bunch of luxury apartments that are next to each other. But like across the street, there's a ton of private houses. So, but it's really in the suburbs. We have a gym that's in our building. So I just go down there. I'll use the treadmill on that, or I take my dog walking, that kind of thing. So there's plenty of areas for me to walk around.
I'm just showing you this in case this is helpful. Everyone's saying congratulations, but be careful with OMAD. I lost too much muscle mass. Be sure to get I'm guessing they say lots of protein. I don't know what OMAD stands for.
That means 1 meal a day. And actually, I'm not going to be doing any fasting for the next couple months. I have to eat more. I have to get used to eating more food, taking more protein.
I was an idiot and tried intermittent fasting after I had my daughter without even realizing that it was going to affect my breast milk supply. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done. So I haven't gone back to intermittent fasting since then. Like, oh, okay, that's why they feed, dairy cows enough to produce milk. But I have heard it's not only just good for weight loss, but it's a good it's good for getting toxins out of your body. Is like your body
Yes.
burns toxins, you know, once you're starting to like burn the fat. I am switching to like, I wouldn't call myself like 100% keto, but I'm trying to move more into the like higher fat. I'm basically grain free at this point.
Mhm.
I've gotten headaches since my son was born. I've been trying to get down to the bottom of it. And I think, you know, stress played a part, but I think my metabolism, I just having a harder time with starches. So I have found fats to be something where like you just don't eat as much anyway, but you know, I feel healthier. But it's so funny that for a long time, like we're talking about bias in the media and everything, so long we were told to eat, you know, fat free or low fat. And,
Oh yeah.
you know, so anyway,
But
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the thing you were talking about as far as like cleaning your body, kind of cleaning itself out. So
Uh-huh.
that's called autophagy.
Okay.
Autophagy, assuming you're on a good diet, autophagy hits somewhere around like at the earliest point 17 hours. So that's why when I switched to 18 hours, I officially started getting into autophagy at the 17-hour point, and then that's when like stuff started dropping off. And then right around the 24-hour mark, autophagy continues and it actually increases up until I can't remember if it's 48 hours, and then it switches into something else. There's different stages, but autophagy just means self-eating. You know, so your body is basically becoming more efficient. It's getting rid of cells. You know, that's why you notice people who do fasting, they typically, and they lose a lot of weight, they don't really have like a ton of excess skin because during autophagy, it's getting rid of skin cells it doesn't need. And so like I really don't have like excess skin. I have a little bit of a stomach, but it's not like I don't have like a saggy body like that, even though I lost 75 pounds. But you'll see
That's
people who
amazing.
lose
75
75.
pounds.
Yeah, it's crazy. Uh, and it's been less than a year, but that's what you're talking about. You're talking about autophagy.
Mhm.
Some people do like a random 24-hour fast to reset their stomach if they're having
Yeah.
digestive issues. Um, you know, so there are different benefits. You don't have to do it consistently, but I was using it more as a model for losing weight.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks everybody for
My pleasure.
watching. Don't forget to go check out Adam's stuff. And tomorrow I got Dr. David Brownstein. One of my first censored interviews ever. He's coming on tomorrow. He was treating COVID patients at the very beginning, posting on his own website what was working. And the Federal Trade Commission came after him and told him to take everything down or they were going to take his license away. So that was before YouTube took everything down. The government just came after him. So it was like, oh, I just thought, you know, maybe other doctors would want to know what was working, but I guess not. I guess we just all want to fly in the dark and try to figure it out on our own. So anyway, he'll be back on tomorrow. All right, everybody, have a great night. Thanks, Adam. See you next time.
Thank you.